Just Scott Rubin. I hit record as soon as I joined the call. All right, we're recording. I went live. Everything looks good. Fucking LEDs. Okay. And yeah, good to go. It's Monday, June 30th, 2025. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight we are talking about Blinky lights and LEDs and all that nerd stuff. So it ended up being this weekend. Usually we don't go to Sandy Hook Beach until like August, partly because in New York on the Upper East Coast.
Yeah, I'll go in July.
Yeah, late July though, because even if it's like 100 degrees outside.
I can go right away in July.
The water at the beach is usually well below the threshold of comfort. For swimming.
If it's not Rochester water, it's fine.
But it's below, like, you're not going to be in that water for more than 5 minutes at a time, typically that time of year. Until very recently, water temperatures in the region have been, for some reason, significantly increasing over their historic averages. But this past weekend, the past 2 weeks, the water is about 10 degrees warmer than it normally is at this time of year. So
I wonder.
Yeah, I wonder why. So we were like, oh, great. Fuck it. So we're going to go to Sandy Hook Beach. And of course, no one's able to pivot their plans that quickly. So the two of us went by ourselves, as we often do. And we did a few things this time. So when we went to buy tickets, they, the way this works, you live in New York, there's a special like ferry that goes.
It's a private company that has a contract because the beach is a federal park.
Yep.
So they have a special contract with the park. They have to operate in a certain way.
Yep. Like this ferry actually goes to a place called Highlands further off. It just stops at Sandy Hook, but you can only get on or off at Sandy Hook if you bought a round trip for use of the beach within a single day and you came from Manhattan. We have seen a person get arrested trying to force their way onto the ferry despite having not come from Manhattan that same day. Like, the Park Service takes this really seriously. So
they're very strict about enforcing the rule that, like, you can't just drive to the beach from Jersey and then get on the boat and go to Manhattan.
Yep.
It's
so
if you want to go to Manhattan on the boat, you have to go to Highland in New Jersey.
But also, this ferry it started out pretty janky in terms of operations. Like, it used to be, the only way to buy tickets was to buy them, like, at the ferry dock right before you get on the boat. So, like, if you get there too late, the boat might just fill up and you got to wait for the next one that's, like, hours later.
In society, everyone got phones.
Yep. There were also, they only have 3 that go there and 3 that come back. And in the old days,
on the weekday, there's 1 that goes there and 1 that comes back.
But back in the day,
I guess on holidays, sometimes they do more,
They would give a big discount if you went out on the earliest ferry because people don't get up early, as we've talked about many times. When we go to the beach, we'll spend a full day at the beach and we'll be leaving the beach as most people seem to be arriving at the beach.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, if you're going to go and spend a day at the beach, there are some people who are like beach people and they like live near the beach or they go there frequently. And if you go there a lot, it's like, I can understand going for just a few hours, right? Whatever. But it's like, if you're making a special beach trip, you only go a handful of times a summer. It's like, don't you want each one to be as long as possible? Get there as soon as a lifeguard is there, or maybe even before then, and stay as long as you can stay before you go home.
Yep, like rolling in at 3. It's like the people when we ski. Like, we're there on the first chairs because, lift tickets like hundreds of dollars. So I'm fucking skiing as much as I can.
Right,
but
like I go to an amusement park. I go when the gates open and I leave when they kick me out.
Right.
And I ride to I get, if you're buying 1 ticket, they don't charge you by the hour. So
this is like ideal beach weather. It's like a perfect weekend. So we get a ticket and I go to the website, and the website, because there's only these 3 ferries in and 3 ferries out, in the past there's been a problem where you might try to get on the 5 o'clock ferry, but it fills up and then fuck you're just stuck here for 2 more hours.
Yeah, I've never had that experience, but I assumed it must have been possible because it's like the ferry has a capacity.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, what if everyone buys tickets for the first ferry in and decides to stay as long as possible, then and doesn't take one of the earlier ferries home, then the last ferry home would be too crowded. And then what? They just leave you there on the island?
Yep.
It's like,
So I go to the website and they made an update. And the update, they have a whole thing on the schedule that's like, if you take the first ferry there, you must take the first ferry home. If you take the second ferry there, you must take the second ferry home.
it seems like they only wrote that in text and did not enforce it with software.
Yep.
But, I don't know what they would do if you disobeyed the text.
Oh, we disobeyed. So what we did, I bought round trip tickets because you can only buy round trips, and I chose the first ferry out and the last ferry back, and that's what was written on my tickets. And the people checking tickets, that's the only thing they have to go on. So it worked out.
Okay, so you don't, because I mean, there is a possible way to get a shenanigan. For example, you could take the boat to Highland, which there's no restrictions on that.
Yep.
And then make your way from Highland to the beach, and then who's gonna stop you from doing that if you come in the beach through the other entrance?
Yep. The thing is,
of course, to go home, you have to bike back to Highland.
but also they scan every ticket now, like with phones. And when they scan the ticket, like they're checking every single ticket. And the only way to be able to get on at Sandy Hook is to have a round trip from that same day. So most shenanigans would cost you a lot of money because it's like $50 for a round trip ticket.
Right, I'm saying is that you would just not use the ferry at Sandy Hook. You would use the ferry at Highland as the end around their rules if you wanted to change your hours. Right?
Yep. But if you drive to the beach or get there by any means other than the ferry, there are no rules. Do whatever the fuck you want.
Well, the problem with driving to the beach is that they let a limited number of people on the island per day, and that's it. So if you don't get there early enough, they'll just stop you and be like, sorry, no more cars on the island today.
So
Bye.
on that, we get on the morning ferry, and there's like nobody on the ferry. And then
there's not, yeah.
And then we get to the beach, and it's like weirdly empty for being like, I cannot imagine better beach weather. Like, it was a perfect storm. So we have a great day, and we go swimming for the first time at the Naked Beach, which technically is federal land and technically is not subject to New Jersey.
The whole island is federal land.
Yeah, but well, it's complicated because New Jersey state law applies to most of the beaches on the island. But one of the beaches is like in a weird legal gray area where it's federal, and as a result, New Jersey laws don't apply such that you can just be naked on it. And people are just naked on it, and it's the
same thing down Jacob Reese. There's the beach. Yep. It's also the same. It's its same federal park, the Gateway National Recreation Area.
So
which is one federal park that is spread out over like a tremendous area.
So I think I'm only ever going to that Naked Beach going forward because one, the vibe is way better. It's very gay. Two, there aren't lifeguards, so you can just swim without people yelling at you. Just don't be stupid.
Well, that's not good. I want to go to the beach with lifeguards so I don't die.
I mean, the lifeguards only let you swim out like 20 feet, so...
Yeah, so you don't die.
I mean, just don't swim out more than 20 feet and you're not going to die. There were more people swimming there than were swimming at the other beaches, and it was just great. So I'm pretty much only going to that beach from now on.
Swimming in an ocean without a lifeguard.
I have routinely swum in the ocean without a lifeguard, especially in a cove like that. The danger is negligible unless you do something extremely stupid.
I'm just saying, it's not a good idea.
Also, most of the beaches don't have lifeguards anymore because of funding cuts, so there are very few areas to swim on all of Sandy Hook.
Yeah, I mean, last year when I went, there were lifeguards.
There's a narrow slice at the edge of C Beach, and there's a narrow slice on the southern tip of B Beach, and that's it. D has no lifeguards, and nothing has lifeguards except those two tiny slices. We biked the whole island.
Which letter it was, but there's one beach that has a lifeguard house, and that one had at least three lifeguards.
There are two thin areas that are swimmable, and everything else has big unguarded beach signs that look new. So anyway, Naked Beach is the best, and we're only going to that beach from now on. It's just nice. But otherwise, then we get on we go out to lunch and we bike over to where we get seafood usually, and then we see the beach was not crowded because there was a traffic jam that extended in every direction on every road we could see from the high points of cars all trying to get to Sandy Hook Beach, and none of them were moving. And they were all bottlenecked at the ticket booth that was extremely slow at taking people's money and does not take cash anymore. And based on what I saw biking over the bridge, they were processing like several minutes per car. So nobody could get in if they had a car, which is fantastic. That line like didn't move in the time we ate lunch and came back.
Okay.
So yeah, ideal beach time. And if any of you live in the New York City area, you should go to Gunnison Beach, the awesome naked gay beach. It's a good time. So you got any news?
I do have a news. What was it?
Yeah, you got the Windows 10 consumer.
So October is swiftly approaching. It's only July, August, 4 months away. And for people with Windows 10, if your computer doesn't let you upgrade to Windows 11, you're gonna have to be stuck. And if you're one of those weirdos, you can listen to our Windows 11 episode.
If you have any reason you as a person don't want to upgrade to Windows 11, that reason is stupid.
Unless your reason is your computer won't let you, right?
Yep.
There are still ways you can force it to happen. You could do that. That's perfectly fine. It's going to work.
I've seen some significant reports of security patches don't actually apply correctly.
I think it's going to work.
Because they rely on the TPM. Anyway.
But you can have, it's possible that you have a TPM and you do not have a CPU that is new enough for Windows 11, and you can basically force the installer to run and still run. And
my current Windows 10 computer, I do not have a TPM, and you can theoretically
you could just get a TPM and add it to your computer. It's very inexpensive.
Yeah, you can theoretically do that, but in doing some research, most people who have tried to make Windows work that specific way with an i7 6700K have failed or had blue screens.
Well, I've seen people doing it, so it's an option. Regardless, There's another option now, and the other option is the Windows ESU extended support something, and basically extended security updates, which is basically you keep getting updates even though it's done, right? And so normally this program is for like offices where it's like we want to keep getting updates. We'll pay Microsoft to keep getting updates.
Yep, give us time to replace our computers.
Exactly. So they've changed this program. They have the Consumer Extended Security Update program, and you got three options. Option number one, you can pay $30 to get one more year of Windows 10, which honestly is not the worst option, but we'd rather not pay $30, right? We'd rather pay $0. So $0 option number one, if for some reason you have 1,000 Microsoft points in your account, which
what the fuck is a Microsoft point?
You might have it from the Windows Store, some Xbox bullshit, or some Microsoft stuff that you've done in your life, because Microsoft is a thing. You might have points. Check your balance. It's possible. You could presumably get points by buying, I don't know, something, a gift card. I don't know, but yeah, that's another option. And the third option is if you have a Microsoft account and you allow Windows to sync your Windows preferences to the cloud with your Microsoft account, and you log into Windows with your Microsoft account, which is a thing I already did. I've been doing that for many years. Then you get one more year for free.
Not bad. That's a surprising.
It's only the people who are not using a Microsoft account or not syncing their preferences, or
I guess I could add it because my Windows 10 computer is very old, and it has never been linked to a Microsoft account.
Right. Now, obviously, it is still the end of life date for Windows 10 is unchanged. It's still in October of this year.
Yep.
So you will still not be able to get support or anything. But it's did you use Windows 10 support ever? It's no, you just want the updates. As long as you're getting the security updates, you're not going to get feature updates.
Yep. But I cannot stress enough, it is a fucking bad idea. That is officially, and in my professional opinion, a fucking bad idea to run an operating system that's not getting security updates anymore in the year 2025. That will royally screw you over very quickly.
It is okay to use an operating system that does not have security updates in 2025 if A, this computer is never connected to the internet. B, you never do any real work with it. You're just doing other stuff with it.
Well, other stuff.
Something along those lines.
Other stuff.
Some crazy sandbox.
Yeah. Well, I guess other stuff has to be very specific. It can't be something you've ever typed a credit card number into, for example, or logged into any real account through.
We're talking DOS doesn't get security updates, but you know what? You might run DOS to play some old game, right?
Yep.
It's that kind of situation.
Don't connect that DOS to the internet somehow.
Don't use DOS to file your taxes. But yeah, so if you have a Windows 10 computer, you can extend and get one more year of security updates to carry you one more year and not have to buy a new computer, not have to force Windows 11 to install yet. etc. And that is good. And of course, the best option, of course, still for the computer would be to just switch to some Linux, situation.
That's basically what I'm going to do with my current HTPC.
If you have much money, go buy a different computer, including an Apple computer or a PC or who knows what.
Yeah, well, I got a good use case because my HTPC is the previous workstation, which is still actually very powerful. But if I want to install Windows 11 on it, I could use it to do a bunch of the VR stuff we're doing anyway. So all it needs is a video card and a new CPU, RAM, and motherboard. I can get the cheapest fucking RAM. Like, that doesn't matter. I can get the cheapest motherboard. The most expensive part of doing that would be buying the cheapest, like, reasonable Intel CPU, which is also not that expensive. You don't need like an i7 or something on that kind of computer. Or I might just install Linux on it and then just keep it as the HTPC forever. Because I'm still amazed this thing is still working. I've never replaced any component of it. It's never had a problem. That computer has never blue screened in its existence.
Yeah, if you're doing gaming, by the way, on PC gaming in the year 2025, there are I think there's actually, based on evidence and reports, if you use SteamOS, which is Linux plus Steam, there is a SteamOS out there now, which is just, but the point is, Steam gaming on Linux with Proton, if you are playing games that work in that setup and are compatible with that setup, it could actually be superior performance-wise in terms of frames and graphics to gaming on Windows. Of course, the downside is not all games will work, right, perfectly. There could be bugs. The game might not work at all, but a lot of games work. It's like anything that works in a Steam Deck is going to work on a PC that runs SteamOS / Linux plus Steam. So that's a lot of games. It's viable now.
Mm-hmm. So in some other news, if you don't remember, not that long ago, Broadcom bought VMware. Now, I haven't actually used VMware myself in a very long time. I don't really run
Nope.
But I used to use it.
We went from VMware and then we went to VirtualBox, and now we don't really, there is still a use case for virtual machines, but, all the use cases I had are solved by
containers. Yeah.
So I think there are very limited use cases left for actual virtual machines because containers cover a lot of the use cases the virtual machines also could do.
And increasingly, I find the kinds of things you need a like full machine virtualization for are the kinds of things you're actually better off running on raw hardware in the year 2025. But I digress. The most important thing to remember about that purchase is that Broadcom paid $61 billion.
Yeah.
Billion.
Yeah. So VMware, even though normal people might not use it or even heard of it, it was a huge product in virtual machines back in, decade or two ago, right? It's absolutely enormous. And before containers, it's like tons of companies were using this, right? Like a crazy number, almost any big installation was using VMware because you would buy a giant piece of hardware and you didn't want to have to buy one computer per computer. You wanted to split that up into many computers, and you didn't have the sort of cloud infrastructure you have today. You didn't have the containers you had today. VMware was the solution, right? To have 10 servers on one physical server. And so a lot of companies went all in on VMware, and they're still sort of stuck with it because they can't just redo their whole infrastructure that quickly. Or easily or at all. And so it's still just deployed very, very widely. And so even if it's a dying product, you're basically can hold all these companies who still use it hostage and force them to pay you whatever you want, almost.
So what's happening now is a few things. So when they announced this, they were obviously going to make a bunch of changes because if you buy something for $61 billion, you think you're going to make more than $61 billion from having this thing.
Yeah.
That's insane to have spent that much money for this, in my personal opinion. So they announced as part of that, one of the things they were doing is that VMware used to sell this thing. They had a bunch of different licenses. Like, it was really complicated, like how to pay for VMware. Like, I never
pricing. Click here for pricing.
I never fully understood it, and I say that as someone who's entire professional career has
I
basically
don't think
been.
there ever was logic to it. It's one of those ones where it's like we talk to you and see what we can get out of you.
Yeah, I sometime not on the air. If you ever meet me at a convention, ask me about enterprise pricing because I have priced enterprise products myself before as someone who had that responsibility for a big company. Anyway, it was really complicated, but one of the things they sold was something they called a perpetual license. You buy this license, you fucking got this software, or at least this subset of their software, forever. Now, I think they sold like support on top of that, but they had these perpetual licenses. So Broadcom almost immediately said, yeah, we're not going to honor those perpetual licenses anymore. We will not renew any support license subscriptions.
Yeah.
Yep, related to that. What's happening now, why this is news, is that most of the world just ignored what they said. And now VMware, so Broadcom, is sending letters to all their biggest customers saying, we want to audit your use of VMware because we think you're still updating your perpetually licensed software. Which leads to the question, how in fuck is this software with this perpetual license that has a separate, now terminated license for support, somehow getting updates is tied to the latter and not the former, and somehow you can just continue to get those updates without a license? Like, how does this whole situation even exist in the first place?
Well, because for them to stop people from getting updates, they would have had to actually have engineers do something.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like they're not having engineers do much of anything on VMware, the product. They're just having business people and lawyers work on VMware, the product, to just try to extract money from everyone using it and not do any more work on it.
Yep.
Because that would just be hiring any engineer. I'm sure someone must be working on it, but any engineering work you do on VMware is just throwing money down a hole, right? Because it's not going to get you more customers. It's not going to. It's a dead product.
Yep.
There's just people who are trapped using it who can't get away from it that quickly.
You've bought a big lemon and you're going to squeeze it until it's dust to get as much juice out of that as possible.
That's right. And
so
that's what they're doing.
Basically, most big companies, and a lot of people have responded to this anonymously, sharing what happened to them. Their response to all this was, fine, we'll just use the perpetual software forever without support. Your support was bad anyway, who cares? And I'm going to quote the article. This year, Broadcom started sending cease and desist letters telling organizations to stop using any maintenance releases, updates, minor releases, extensions, enhancements, patches, bug fixes, or security patches, except for zero-day security patches that VMware has issued since their support contract ended. And basically, there's no way to control or audit or anything. So now VMware is trying to do that thing that a lot of failed companies have done in the past. They want to roll into your office and look at all your computers and decide how much money you owe them. The lawyers are going to be involved in this until the end of time. And I think what's really going to happen is anyone who was still using VMware, now someone's job at that company is to make sure they do not use VMware anymore forever under any circumstances.
Yep. I mean, people were already trying to get away from it, but now, the urgency is increased, right? The smart people already got away from it long ago.
But even better, several companies stood up and said that they received these letters despite having stopped using VMware years ago. It's really messy.
Yeah, they're probably just emailed everyone on their customer list, right? They didn't actually, check.
So, one last little news. We don't get all the details of it, but the EU, which is at this point, probably one of the single most broadly well-functioning democratic unions left, considering what's happening in America. The EU, their regulatory frameworks are a mixed bag, but generally, they have more regulation than countries like the United States, and generally, those more regulations have led to better societal outcomes. Big asterisk in that I'm sure you're thinking of something I'm not thinking of, and it's a really complicated space, but broadly, those are the strokes. So the EU required Apple to do some things to continue to have their app store in the EU. And
we did it as a news back when it was first going, that they told Apple they had to do this, and then Apple came through and partially sort of bad faith did it, but not really.
So on June 26, 2025, Apple has now announced, quote, sweeping App Store changes to comply with all these rules. Basically, Apple realized that Europe was actually serious about cutting them off or fining them, and they couldn't get out of it otherwise.
Right. Yeah, their bad faith. Oh, we're complying with the letter of the law attempt and doing minimal changes did not satisfy the EU regulators. The EU regulators said, no, you have to comply with the law for reals and actually have an open and free situation here. And Apple was just like, well, fuck it. And now they're doing what they should have done originally. They just held out as long as possible. But good for Apple users in the EU. You're going to get the side load and et cetera, et cetera.
Now, in the EU is key because, well, historically, the argument that a lot of people would make is that companies will just leave whatever area has too onerous regulation, blah, 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 blah. Apple obviously wasn't going to just stop selling Apple products in the EU. So instead, the way big companies handle this nowadays is they'll just operate completely differently in countries that have regulations compared to countries that don't. Mm-hmm. And that is what Apple's doing.
I mean, yeah, that's been the excuse, I guess, we're seeing, as there is somewhat increasing pressure to regulate and tax the rich, et cetera, which, we've seen rising steadily for quite a while, but still not nearly high enough. Yeah. The common excuse is, oh, we'll just leave. We'll, and it's
don't threaten me with a good time. New York City is a great example. Let's say the income tax in New York City got high and all the rich people threaten to leave. Either they do leave, in which case our rents come down because we don't need them anymore.
Exactly.
Or they stay and they pay their fair share. And very many rich people, as much as they threaten, they don't actually want to live in bumblefuck Texas.
Yep. Also, if you look, there's been several studies showing that rich people say they're going to leave. They don't actually.
Oh, of course
not. The reality is that rich people are less mobile than non-rich people. Businesses can't move easily. Sometimes they can move, but it's very difficult and expensive to do so. It's like you're going to relocate all your employees or hire all new employees. Even a company moving a short distance that messes up your employees' commutes, it's like it can really ruin your whole
My
show,
last company,
right?
Our office was downtown, and they were thinking of moving to 2 different locations in Manhattan, and one of the locations was further away from the subway, and I low-key threatened to quit if they moved to that office, even though it was like a half mile away from the office.
Right. Businesses and rich people actually less mobile because they got so much stuff, right? And they have so many ties, social ties, physical ties, geographical ties. A person who's not well off, it's like, it's hard for them to move because they can't afford to move, but they don't necessarily, they're likely to have less things tying them down. It's not like they own a home, right? Or anything. It's like they could just go if they have the means to go, they could go, right? And so it's usually a bluff when people are threatening to move. To escape.
But especially with very rich people, I am very, very convinced there are no benefits to anyone who lives in a place if a high percentage of very wealthy people live there. They are a toxic influence on any part of society they interact with.
And I think the other thing is that, at least as far as taxes go, right? I know we were talking about regulations in the story, but it's just because it's a recent topic. As far as taxes go, consider a rich person in New York, like, I don't know, Bloomberg or Dolan, right? And it's like, okay, let's say that they actually move. These billionaires in New York City actually move somewhere else. And we can't tax their salaries as individuals, their personal income, because they don't live in this state or this city. But their assets are here. Madison Square Garden isn't moving. Yeah, right? That's where it is, right? Bloomberg's offices, right? That's where they are. If they vacate those offices, somebody's still in that building. Somebody, right? It's either going to be converted to apartments. No matter what it is, that buildings will be there. And if we tax the assets, right, the things we have in our state, it doesn't matter which rich people own them or who lives where, because we tax the things that exist here. And therefore, we tax Madison Square Garden, we'll get our revenues no matter how far rich people flee. That's where the building is. We got our money. So that's the strategy.
In the meta moment, the Geek Nights Book Club book, which next week on Thursday, we will do the episode. If you haven't started reading it yet, it's a pretty short read. We have a lot to say about it. You should come for the cybernetic, furry-adjacent, boat rave VR brain implant parties. Maybe not stay for the "this is not a serious political theory" part of this book. Yeah. Everything for everyone: an oral history of the New York Commune 2052 to 2072. A pro of this book: it is one of the rare post-apocalyptic books that envisions a world that is getting better as opposed to getting worse. Which I think fiction like that is important in this time, and it's important to not only read about the Torment Nexus because you're living in one. Like, it's okay to imagine a better future. But at the same time, the book, I will say, and we'll get into this in depth in the book club episode, it is frustrating in that every time it's about to address a hard question about any of the topics it raises, it basically just skips to the next chapter. Like, to the point that you can tell when a chapter's coming by the moment the fake interviewer in any chapter asks an actually hard question. But it's worth a read because it's really short, and then Scott will pick a book club, and we'll continue with the book club from there. Otherwise, I
agree with your assessment of the,
yep,
of the book we just read.
Which meant it was an interesting book, and there's a lot of good ideas in it, but it was also a very frustrating book as someone who has studied history even a little.
Yeah. or I don't know, science.
Yeah.
Economics.
So Scott,
high school economics.
Because Emily was reading it too. So an example for you, that space elevator, Emily and I call it the people's. So in Disco Elysium, one of the things you learn about the world in that RPG is that when a certain flavor of communists took over the city, there was a point at which they made the People's Pile, a democratically run co-op that was a nuclear reactor. And the People's Pile became the single biggest radio nuclear disaster in modern history. And it is affectionately known in the current world you're in that game as the People's Pile, parentheses, derogatory. Yes. That is what that space elevator is. Good God.
Pile O.
I mean, they're both going to be a pile.
Pile of something.
Otherwise, we are going to be at PAX West. You should be there too. Stay tuned for what talks we're going to be doing, but I can guarantee if we do any talks at PAX West, they will be brand new talks that are not even close to topics we have covered before. Otherwise, PAX West is always a really good time, and we hope to see you there. I think that's all we got for now, so we can get right into the main bit, the LEDs.
Yeah, I mean, for quite a while now, it used to be that, when you looked at various electronic consumer products in your home, they would only have lights on them for functional reasons. Yep. Right? It's like, oh, maybe you have a volume meter, right? And it needs, it could be just a row of LEDs that all of them are lit up means loud and only one lit up means quiet.
For most of history, they were not LEDs. They were other forms like that vacuum, whatever.
Yeah, there are all kinds, but various types of small light up displays.
Vacuum fluorescent was the height of good-looking interfaces that were like that back in the day.
But the point is, consumer electronics, there's your computer would have an LED on it that would say, "I'm on."
Yep. Right? Usually they were really dim and really red, and but they were important.
Still has one of those, right? But people wouldn't put extra lights for fun until much more recently. I'd say the past 10, 15 years or so, right? I guess during the existence of GeekNights, it's gone from like a new thing to now an extremely common thing.
Like when I would go to LAN parties in high school, everyone's computers, nobody had customized computers except the interiors. Have they added components? Or did they add some like janky cooling? I used to take the side off my computer when I was at LAN parties so it wouldn't overheat playing games. But nobody had lights. Nobody, like, the craziest thing I ever saw anyone have is they'd done something ridiculous. They had cut out the side of their case and put a piece of plexiglass in there instead. And back in the day, that was crazy. People didn't have things like that. Not like today where every case is basically glass. So, but also LEDs were not like common, and like it was even hard to expand a computer back then, let alone add a light that you can control in some fashion. So if anyone lit up their case, they were putting incandescent bulbs probably, if they did anything. It's like spotlights. I ignored these LEDs until now, when every computer, like, it just comes with cases, and my computer down there is actually quite blinky. There's rainbow blinking on the inside. All the fans light up and go crazy when I'm playing music. I just embraced it, but I don't put a lot of thought into it. Yeah, but I guess one thing I find very interesting is that this technology, unlike many other pieces of computer technology, like cases, computer cases, I think, just got better as time went on at being computer cases. While there have been coming and going of various aesthetics, functionality has always been the forefront, and the times there were cases that were less functional than previous generations, they got bad reviews on Egghead or Newegg, and really no one ever bought them, and they failed. So computer cases functionally,
there have been so many ergonomic improvements, and it's sort of weird, because it's like, how badly do you need those improvements? Because it's like you build your computer once, you close it, and now all those improvements mean nothing. But at the time you're building it, or if you're a person who works on your computer frequently, because it's like you're one of those people, then those things will matter more. But it is still, during that one moment where you're building your computer, it's really nice to use a nicer case compared to an old busted one.
Yeah, like, the other day, not that long ago, we had to open up an older case to like do something because we're replacing some components in an old computer. And it's poison to touch an old computer case from even like a decade ago compared to modern ones. But that just got better. Like the wiring harnesses got better, the USB interfaces got better, like everything got better. Meanwhile, the LEDs, how you control and manage them in computer cases, I don't think it's actually getting better. I think it's getting worse, in that the software and hardware standards are quite fractured, poorly documented, don't interoperate very well.
Windows is trying to, there's some efforts in Windows to sort of, collect and organize it under a single place.
Yep.
Instead of letting you have, one piece of software for the lights on your mouse, and another one for the lights on your cooler, and another one for the lights in your case, another one for the lights in your keyboard. Another one for the video card, right? Yep. It's like, and they all have different abilities and capabilities in terms of what you can configure. One's got colors, one can blink, one's got patterns, one can do that. There is an effort in Windows to sort of collect it all into one standard place, but it's not all the way there yet.
Yep, and there's also a bunch of competing open standards because of the nerds who are invested in this, which leads to something interesting. I don't know exactly what is driving this, but there is a sort of specific correlation I noticed. Having built a computer more recently and interacted with a bunch of these different standards. The cases and like the wiring on the cases, and similarly, the motherboards themselves, the actual technical documentation, like the manuals, has continued to be very good. Not like there's been some fall off in, I think, motherboard documentation more recently in some new areas, but broadly, the documentation is still very accurate and very good. I find the documentation that is part of that ecosystem for the LEDs specifically is written like bullshit, is often like incorrect, filled with misspellings, like just wiring design, like errors in the diagrams, like the documentation is bad.
Well, it's, usually gone through translation between different languages also.
But I think what this seems to correlate with is the people who care about the functionality of computers are the ones who are engaging with the documentation directly for the technical parts of computers. I don't think, by and large, those people think that much about the LED nonsense. And the people who care a lot about the LED nonsense, I think, are the people where fucking with their computer is a hobby. And those people, I have found in my experience, tend not to read documentation anyway and just try to make stuff work and follow YouTube tutorials. So it's almost like this perfect storm of...
Well, the person who made the YouTube tutorial read the documentation and then is basically just making a video where they read it out loud for people who don't want to read.
I don't think a lot of them read the documentation, because I was, there are 3 different RGB controllers in this fucking case that I'm touching right here. And I was looking for documentation on exactly what could be wired where and what's compatible with what and how this all works. And that documentation does not actually exist. And the videos I found would describe how to do things, but I am confident they were constructed via trial and error and not via actually having read specific documentation. Just a correlation I noticed. I don't have any like strong takeaway from that other than I think I feel like the mass of people who engage with a technical hobby are generally going to cause the documentation and support infrastructure around that hobby to behave a certain way.
Anyway, so you got all these lights on your computer, on other consumer electronics devices that are now there for decorative purposes, right? You even people with like televisions that have or monitors that have LEDs on the back that shine against the wall. Some of these lights, they're mostly decorative purposes, but they could have some functional purposes as well. For example, my mouse has lights for decorative purposes, but it's a wireless mouse, and it will also use the light to let you know when the battery's low. And that's nice, right? It's a dual purpose thing. You might think lights in a keyboard kind of useless, but at night, helps the backlight behind the keys can help when the room is completely dark a little bit.
Yep.
Also, there is a feature that lets you do funky patterns, right? Like blinking or whooshing, all kinds of crazy stuff that's 99% purely decorative. But one of the modes basically makes it so that when you press a key, it like makes an explosion of light coming out of that key. And that is mostly, they made that thinking that it was for decorative purposes, right? It looks cool when you're typing. It's like little, like your fingers are raindrops landing in a puddle of light that emits from your fingertips, right? But you know what? That's great at letting you know when the keys are working. If a switch is broken and that light doesn't light up, you know it's a hardware problem. You know it's not something else, right? So it's actually somewhat useful to know that like that keyboard switch is good. If it's not working, it's something else. It's not the switch that's the problem, right? But most of the time, keep that setting off because looking at you. Another example would be like, okay, you got a cooling thing with a giant heatsink on your CPU or your GPU, right? That's got designs and colors because you want to show off at the bring your own PC or whatever. But you know what? You can hook those things up you can link the colors or patterns of those lights to various variables. For example, your
my lights right now, they do a spectrograph and a volume thing based on the audio that is coming into the computer.
Right, and that's kind of fun, I guess. Yeah. But it's only barely useful if at all, really.
But the one that I have that's useful is on the front, one fan is a color representing how hot my CPU is, and the one under it is my GPU. They're both dark green right now because podcasting doesn't do anything on this crazy workstation.
Of course not. But that is somewhat useful, right? Because it used to be you would dedicate like some desktop space to showing the temperatures or something, or you'd have to open up an app to check. And this is like with a quick glance, if your computer is up where you can see it, like you'll notice like if it's green 90% of the time, if it turns red, like it'll just grab your attention and you'll just notice it like, whoa, my computer's hot.
Like when I launch Baldur's Gate, I see the CPU get hotter and hotter and hotter for the first few minutes.
But you know it's not a problem because you're playing Baldur's Gate.
Exactly.
But if it turned red when you were just browsing some websites, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
Grab your attention suddenly, and that is a useful function. I would actually recommend having it be off instead of green and turning it to red. Have it be off, and then if it gets hot, turn on and become red. And then that would grab. It's like, why? Because like you're used to seeing no light. The presence of light would be better than more attention getting when you're used to the complete absence of light.
And that fits into my favorite topic, hierarchy of attention, user experience design.
Yep. So some, the LEDs that go against the wall behind the monitor, sometimes they can provide some contrast with what's on the
I've never
screen.
liked that, and the argument I've seen that people always say is that, well, you're looking at a relatively small screen compared to your view, so if the room is dark, it like blah blah blah, and usually it's a little edging into woo of it impacting you in some way. So
show me some studies or whatever.
Yeah, so the idea is the area around your monitor is like a diffuse version of what's on the monitor in some way, and that is good for you And honestly, what I find is it might be pleasant for the person using a computer. It is not pleasant for anyone else in that room who is not using that computer.
Yeah. I think one thing, you could argue for, even though it'd be completely subjective, is like, okay, you're watching something, a movie, playing a video game, right? And the color of the light against the wall could sort of match the mood of what you're playing. So like if you're playing a Mario and you're in the water level, it would be blue light would turn on against the wall. And then you go to the grass level and it turns to green light against the wall. And it's like, all right, I guess you can sort of see that, right? But it's like, when I look at things, no matter the size of the screen, whether it's a giant screen IMAX or like my phone, if I'm watching something, a game or a movie or a TV show or whatever on a screen, as soon as I'm engrossed in whatever it is that I'm looking at, no matter how big the screen is, my entire mental vision, right, is basically that screen, and I don't see anything else in the world.
Yep,
right?
it's like my mind's eye has gone into that sensory input, and everything else is on autopilot. I don't see it.
Right.
I don't experience it.
It's like if there is something outside of my vision could, or in the corner of my eye could pull my attention away, but as long as I'm absorbed in it, I don't see anything outside the screen. All I'm seeing is that. So the lights around the edge, I wouldn't notice them ever.
Yep.
Right?
That applied even when we were watching episode 23 of Trigon in basically 15p resolution.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I don't really know how useful that is, and it,
Now, what is
I guess
interesting?
it could be if somebody if they knew that you had that, and they cleverly made a video game or a movie or something, intentionally incorporate that into the work on purpose, then maybe. But I've never seen anyone do that.
Yeah, well, case in point, you could do that, but most of those systems, if they're reacting to the content, they're doing something simple like averaging the colors on the screen and then just using that to program the addressable LEDs on the back of the screen. Like, it's just automatic. And authorial intent and intentionality matters a lot to me, because if you remember when 3D movies were a thing and then everybody gave up on that again, Fury Road had phenomenal 3D, and most 3D movies, it was kind of just like a gotcha gimmick that didn't really do anything. The movies that were filmed in 3D tended to have worse 3D than movies like Fury Road, where they weren't filmed in 3D. Someone went in after the fact and decided, here is what the 3D will do. There was authorial intent in the 3D effect the user experiences, as opposed to authorial intent in recording the three-dimensional scene. And I think there is a distinction there. And I think with these LEDs, it's the same thing. Unless the game designer intended it, you're not likely to enhance the experience meaningfully. What I am interested in is, and I was looking into, one of our Torchiere LEDs died, so I was looking at replacements, and the form of lighting for a house, like a room, that I like the most is cornice lighting. It's basically the best form of lighting for a space that humans live in, other than natural light coming in through big open windows.
Yeah, I think the best lighting is really different for every different kind of room. I don't think there's...
Well, if you want a diffuse light that illuminates a space for human use without casting strong shadows, without having bright spots, hot spots, like a living room in the afternoon, that's a pretty good form of lighting. And there's a lot of variation on exactly how you do it. But what most people do is, and this is like really popular in college dorms, is they'll buy cheap LED strips, stick them up around the ceiling, and then connect to them via all the various open standards and configure them just like they configure the LEDs in a computer. And it is cool, but at the same time, it is so janky to do that. Like the guy, because I was thinking about doing it in this room, and to do it for a reasonable price as a nerd who does everything by yourself, it is really easy to cause huge problems. And to do it the way professionals do it would cost many, many thousands of dollars. But the preponderance, like the growth of just RGB controllers or addressable LED strips. Like, the components are out there for people who are into blinky light lighting. You could literally have the same little controller that's controlling the little stupid LEDs inside your computer, controlling the lighting in your entire room. It's all doable if you just know how to write some code and are willing to navigate a space that has poorly documented or non-existent APIs.
Mm-hmm.
What annoys me, though, is how many, not so much the computers, because I can disable these. Like, I can turn off any LED I want if I need to. How many digital devices I have that are not computers, where there is a bright as fuck LED that can't be turned off. Mm-hmm. Looking at you, Anchor.
Yeah, one example that's I think clear. I'm 99% this is intentional, right? So I have a sound bar and a television from Samsung, right? And they have microphones built into them. And why is there a microphone built into your television and your sound bar? Well, there's two reasons.
Spy on you.
Reason number one is because they have features to calibrate your sound system where they play sounds and then listen to those sounds and then calibrate themselves in some way.
Yep.
The second reason is because they have Siri / Alexa / whatever integrations with some AI voice assistant bullshit. And you need to be able to say, "Hey, TV, blah blah blah," which I turn that shit off anyway, right? And then 3, they probably are spying on you.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, there is a physical button you can press on the TV and also one on the soundbar to hardware disable the microphone. So you push the button and the microphone is off.
Is there a red light telling you it's off forever now?
When it's off, the red light. When it's off, the red light turns on. And so, shouldn't it be the red? It's like,
in recording studios, because, I have professional experience in recording studios, there's a red light that turns on when you're recording. And when you're not recording, it's not like there's a different light. That light is just off. It's the on-air light.
You do need some sort of indicator to, like, confirm that whether it's on or off with certainty. But it's like, if it's an annoying light, you're going to make me want to turn it back on.
I think that's a dark pattern. I think that is intentional.
Obviously. It's like there's this annoying light there. You want the light to go away, but you also want the microphone to be off, and you can't have it both ways. But it's like, oh yeah, we'll turn off the annoying light if you just let us spy on you with our microphone.
The listener just said in the chat, "I swear Anchor are in cahoots with big electrical tape."
Yeah, clearly, right?
Oh my God, I was in London recently and I went to bed and then I realized there's a bright blue LED somewhere. And then I discover the electrical tape that's on my Anchor had come off during transit.
Exactly. So yeah, it's like these lights, they're functional lights, right? They're not just decorative, but they're wrong. They're backwards. They're a problem of some kind.
Yep.
That's a thing.
The one trick is that if any of you younglings don't know this, and this was a thing in pre-USB keyboards, but it remains a thing with USB keyboards. Your num lock, caps lock, and scroll lock, those little lights on your keyboard that say if those are on, those are the single quickest way to figure out if your computer has frozen in a hard way, like a hardware freeze. Because if a computer is frozen at the hardware level, it is fucked. It is unresponsive in a completely unrecoverable way. Those lights will get stuck, and if you hit numlock on your keyboard, the light won't turn off or turn on. It just will stay lit. So that's a really good trick to figure out, is my computer properly fucked or is just something else going on?
Yeah, because numlock, those locks, right? Your keyboard doesn't have any state in it. It's just you push keys and it sends signals, right? So the state of those lights is the computer telling your keyboard that, hey, numlock is on.
Yeah.
But also, if you have, say, a Mac or another, it might not. If I'm in Mac mode, those lights don't actually.
Yeah.
The numlock isn't. It's not the same. But on a PC, yeah, that's gonna work.
Yep, and not that long ago at work, I was thinking about this because someone where I went to someone's desk and they're like, oh, I think my computer's hung, and they're not sure what to do. And I reach over and I just start tapping numlock, and then I'm like, oh, your computer's froze. You should just reboot it. And he's like, how did you know? And I explained this to them. So it was front of mind. Like, because from the perspective of a young person, that is a magic trick to walk over and just tap numlock and then be like, oh yeah, your computer's crashed.
Okay.
So yeah.
People don't know computers these days.
Yep. If you've got LEDs in your bedroom, cover them with tape because light while you're sleeping is bad for you. And otherwise, do whatever you want with LEDs. Like, there's no skin off my back. I'm not anti Blinky light computer like Scott is. My computer is doing crazy rainbow shit down there, and I'm fine with it.
I think it matters. I think it's, first of all, my computer is down below my desk. Even if I did rainbow shit, I'd never see it.
Well, my computer is below my desk, but highly visible to me.
I don't even know. Is it down there?
Yeah.
I can see it down there, right? It's like it's hiding. But it's like even if I had it up on the desk, it's like, do I want it to be like shining light all the time? Be kind of annoying, right?
Oh, so I just remembered. I saw this at a PAX a long time ago, and I probably have a photo of it. But it was a computer someone had in the PC area, and I took a telephoto photo of it because I wasn't allowed in there. They used to let us in there to walk around, and they stopped a long, long time ago. And it was a computer, and it was turned sideways, like on the desk, and there was no monitor. And on the little cooler was a tiny screen, and that was the screen the person was using. And they were playing a game, partly as obviously like a show-off joke, on the tiny screen on the cooler. And there was no other monitor.